Hey, I'm Rachel,
And I'm Amanda, and this is Beyond a Ballot.
powered by DoorDash. Welcome to Beyond a Ballot. Well, we're off to the races in Ontario. This week, Premier Ford asked the LG to dissolve the legislature, saying that he needs a mandate to govern through the Trump administration. On Wednesday, all the leaders were out launching their campaigns at different stops across the province. And here to break it all down for us is the amazing Laura Stone, who is the Queen's Park Bureau Chief for the Globe and Mail. Hi, Laura.
Hey, thanks for having me.
We
Thanks
are
for the promotion.
Yeah.
I'm not the bureau chief, but I'll take it.
Well, you should be. You should be.
Yeah, I share my job, but no, that's awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
What is your official title?
Just Queen's Park reporter. But
Queen's
no,
Park
it's perfect.
Report. Okay,
Love
well,
it.
I'm manifesting for you there, and if
Yeah,
the Globe
thank
and Mail
you.
is listening, we believe in her promotion. Let's dive in here because you've had a crazy week. Obviously, we've pulled you off the campaign for a few minutes, and we're so appreciative of you joining us. So, start from the beginning. Why is this election even happening?
It's a very good question, and one that the opposition leaders have been asking too. It feels like we've been on the campaign trail for weeks because Premier Ford has kind of been cataloging the fact that he wants to go to an early election. It was really solidified with Donald Trump's comments after his inauguration, where he said that he would be imposing 25% tariffs on Canadian goods starting on February 1st. And so Mr. Ford has said that he now needs a strong mandate, a new mandate from the public to take on these threats from Mr. Trump. He said he might have to spend tens of billions of dollars in helping businesses and workers, and he doesn't have the mandate from the public for that. So he wants to take it to them more than a year ahead of schedule,
Right.
and call this early campaign. And so he has sort of set expectations high for himself too, in saying that he wants an even stronger mandate than his current majority government in the Ontario legislature, in order to counter these threats. And he says, not just for today, not for a week from now, but for 4 years, which will outlast Donald Trump. So that's his official reason for wanting to take Ontarians to the polls.
Okay, if that's the official reason, what is the unofficial reason?
I think there's lots of unofficial reasons, which political observers have been talking about it and watching for. One, he's going early because he obviously thinks he can win, and he thinks he can win right now. The timing is very good for him. He's the chair right now of the Council of the Federation, the head of all the premiers in the country, which just happens to be happening right now for him. And so he's taken kind of a very front and center role in taking on Donald Trump. He's had a very visible presence. So he has a big presence now. So for countering Trump tariffs or the threat of Trump tariffs, he's speaking from a very powerful position. If you look at what's happening on the federal scene, I think Mr. Ford has wanted to for some time to go up against Justin Trudeau in Ontario. He views, that party's carbon tax as particularly unpopular. Mr. Trudeau's personal popularity has fallen. Now that Mr. Trudeau has said he's resigning and stepping down when they choose a new leader, he's sort of running out of time to take on Trudeau in Ontario. And then, of course, you have the prospect of potentially a federal conservative government coming in and making some bold changes that might be difficult or unpopular in the first year. And that could be more challenging for Mr. Ford to take the electorate to the polls next June, which is when the election's scheduled for. That he could be facing, more of an unhappy electorate with the Conservative Party, or more challenges there for himself. And then you just look at what's happening in the polls. He's been riding high in the polls, Mr. Ford is, enough to secure another majority. And he's also going up against two more untested leaders, the NDP leader, Marit Stiles, who has been in the role for some time, but she hasn't faced Mr. Ford in an election campaign yet. And then you have Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie, who came in just over a year ago and doesn't have a seat yet. And she'll be seeking one in this campaign. So I think there's a confluence of factors that make this particularly attractive to him at this time.
So one of the questions that I have been asked over the last few days, over and over and over again, is if we have set election dates, how is it possible that Ford was able to call this election in Ontario?
Well, it's sort of a formality that he's able to do that. He had to go and seek permission, I suppose, from the lieutenant governor and lay out his reasons. And he has portrayed this, I guess, as an economic crisis or a potential crisis for the province, and that is the reason why he has to seek the mandate now. But it's not very common, I guess, that these figureheads would reject the proposal from the government, like when the federal government goes to the governor general and tries to dissolve parliament as well. So, he is allowed to do this with the blessing of the lieutenant governor, and she granted it to Mr. Ford earlier this week.
It's kind of interesting. Like, definitely that's a question that keeps coming in for us. It's sort of like, why do we have these fixed election dates? And one of the big criticisms, of course, from the opposition leaders has been the amount of money that will be spent on this election to the tune of $200 million or almost $200 million. Do you think that price tag will play much in the minds of Ontarians right now? Do you think that will be an issue that he'll need to overcome?
I think it's a factor. I think it's something that, the chief electoral officer was out making this figure public. I think the opposition leaders will continue to bring it up as, do you want money spent on an election right now? Or do you want this money spent on healthcare, for instance? We've heard that from Bonnie Crombie already. I think, whether the election happens now or it happens next year, it's always going to cost this much money. But the timing of it, I think, is suspect to some people. And whether people feel, even if they support Mr. Ford or think he's doing a good job, they might question why he's choosing to do this and view it potentially as opportunistic, which is how it's being portrayed by the opposition. So it's going to be a factor. It's going to be criticized throughout the campaign. And I think the opposition is really trying to focus on kind of the domestic issues that are going on in the province. As Doug Ford runs against Donald Trump, they're trying to run against Doug Ford and his record.
Right. That's so interesting to me watching this campaign. But I'm having flashbacks to the 2020 BC campaign, because you'll remember that was a similar situation. We were in the middle of a pandemic. John Horgan, the NDP leader, was riding high in the polls, and he did the same thing a couple of years early, asked the LG to dissolve parliament out here. So that worked out well for him. Interesting to see how it'll work for Doug Ford. I want to touch on Bonnie Henry back in BC, Bonnie Crombie, because she's an interesting character. This is a woman who was a federal member of parliament. She was the mayor of Mississauga after Hazel McCallum, a longtime mayor there. She's now the Liberal leader in Ontario. Has she gained momentum since becoming, I believe she's been in there for about a year. What's the role that she's playing in this campaign? How is she coming in, and what is her positioning?
I think she's going to be really interesting to watch in how she's able to shore up the vote in the Greater Toronto area, which has been a weakness for the Liberals in the past couple of campaigns, and where Mr. Ford has able to gain a lot of support and hang on to his majority. She comes in with some pretty big name recognition in Mississauga, which is a suburb of Toronto, and she won the mayoralship there 3 times. She was also a councillor and, as you mentioned, an MP. I think it's been difficult for her to gain traction so far. Just, she's only been leader for a year. She doesn't have a seat. So while she comes to Queen's Park and tries to talk about the issues, she's not actually facing Mr. Ford in the legislature and taking on the government in that way. But I was at her campaign launch today, actually, in Mississauga, and she talked a lot about the fact that she has this kind of high profile. She doesn't feel like she's at risk in losing the seat that she's running for. It doesn't have an incumbent from the Conservatives. That person's not running again. And so that will be fascinating to watch, to see if she's able to, gain some seats for the Liberals, which has been a challenge over the past couple of campaigns. They don't have official party status right now. If she's able to even move the Liberals into the official opposition. So while we're all watching how the leaders take on Doug Ford, how the opposition leaders take on each other is also going to be a factor in this race. And that's going to be fascinating to see how the NDP and the Liberals sort of jockey for that anyone but Ford vote.
Laura, you mentioned the polls. The PCs are up 20 points in the polls. So they're at a serious advantage as we're heading into these early election days. Is there, and we've also seen over the past at least 7 weeks, Doug Ford's own popularity increase. His negatives have gone down in polling. So across the board, he's sitting at a really cushy place. Do you see any path to victory for either of the opposition parties?
I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't have a good answer to that.
That's okay. No, I don't know is a perfectly reasonable answer.
I don't know. I think you have to look at why Ford is doing this. He is it's a big risk, right? To go early and to face the public like this. He must have a team of people who are crunching numbers, pollsters, advisors who have said, this is your time. This is the perfect time for you to go. And people might be displeased by the fact that there is an early election. I think the Star had a poll saying that, something like 40% of people weren't too happy, or 30% didn't really see why we're having an election, but they might be willing to look past that because they do feel like Doug Ford's doing a good job, or they feel like they know him, or feel like they can trust him at this time. I think what's interesting about this campaign is that so much of what the PCs are running on depends on outside events. When you're running against Donald Trump and his threats, you have no idea what he's going to do.
Right.
And so I think that's the biggest risk for them. And having plunged the province into an election, there's only so much the government can do now. They're in what's called caretaker mode, where they're not supposed to be spending money or announcing new initiatives. So if tariffs are imposed on Saturday, sweeping ones that within a couple of weeks devastate the economy in some way, how is Mr. Ford going to be able to respond to that? I think that's been a point that the opposition has brought up so far, is that he's kind of abandoning his post as premier during this time where we need leadership. And so that's the risk for the PCs, so much of this depending on outside events and depending on a very mercurial American political figure.
Does he still...
And how would he respond?
Yeah.
How would the province be able to respond in this scenario?
So the government has said, as Mr. Ford launched his campaign, he said his government has come up with some sort of action plan were tariffs to be instituted. I'm not sure. I would have to do more research to see, or speak to more people within political circles and sort of ethical circles to see exactly what the government could do right now, because there are exceptions if in the time of a crisis or a public health emergency, I think, where the government is able to step up to the plate. This could meet that threshold if there was some sort of devastating action on the part of the United States towards Canada during this time. So it's not like the government's completely frozen. It's just not kind of the norm that they would be able to respond as governments normally do. So we haven't seen the details of that plan. We're expecting it to trickle out during the campaign, which is sort of part of the PC's campaign pitch. But that's the fascinating question that you bring up. What exactly could they do? What do the rules allow? What's an emergency? These are all questions that are going to play out during the campaign. And also, Doug Ford is traveling to the U.S. during the campaign. He's going to be visiting Washington at least twice as premier, while also kind of campaigning as PC leader here. So there's going to be a lot of digging into like advertising rules, spending rules, electoral rules, as he's sort of navigating both of these worlds throughout this very tumultuous time.
This is fascinating to me because as a political campaign lover, this narrative of fighting against Donald Trump is so... I've never seen anything like it, that they would have to call an election for a global event. I mean, typically when we talk about provincial campaigns, we're talking about healthcare, we're talking about education, we're talking about these very localized issues. Do you feel, as somebody that watches Queen's Park so closely, that this message is resonating with Ontarians? I mean, obviously the polls show that he's very popular, but does the average Ontarian, are they buying into this message of the global threat over fighting about hospitals or education and those types of policies?
I think, first of all, I'm not sure how many people are yet aware that there is a campaign going on and that an election has kicked off. And I don't, and people are very into their own lives and informed, but I just mean this is happening sort of in the dead of winter. It's kind of coming out of nowhere. Maybe throughout the next month, as we start to see campaign signs pop up and stuff, people will start to pay more attention. But I think kind of Donald Trump and the looming threats is sort of what everyone's been hearing about. So the fact that this election is happening under the auspice of that is sort of what everyone's paying attention to anyways. I think there are obviously problems of healthcare and family doctor shortage and emergency rooms closing. A lot of people have personal experience with that.
Mhm.
But whether that's an issue that they're like gravitating towards right
Mhm.
now at this time in politics, I'm not sure. I don't know. I think we'll have to see more how the campaign goes on and what kind of polling comes out, and awareness to see exactly what issues people are focusing on right now. Because right now, for the past month, it has been all about Donald Trump and the threat of these tariffs.
Can I just ask also, though, the opposition, how are they positioning themselves? Because we saw Bonnie Crombie come out and launch her campaign in front of a hospital talking about
Mhm.
healthcare. Merit Stiles, I can't remember what she was talking about the other day, it was also a provincial issue. Do you think that they will try and turn the conversation towards more of those local issues and less about Donald Trump?
Yes, I think absolutely they are. I think Stiles was talking more about a grab bag of issues in the province: healthcare, housing, affordability. And she did, I think, mention Donald Trump more than we heard from Bonnie Crombie, who was laser focused on the healthcare issue, and that's clearly going to be the kind of the main message of the Liberal Party. They clearly see a weakness in how the PCs have handled this. But yes, I think that they are trying to present this as an opportunity. So Doug Ford wants to have an election. Well, we're going to talk about the issues in the province now. This isn't just about Donald Trump. This is about what's happening in Ontario and how they perceive Mr. Ford has kind of failed in his leadership, with the kind of the added insult, I suppose, of calling this campaign at a time when Ontario
Mhm.
does need leadership. So I think they are very much going to try to make it about domestic issues. They've been asked a bit about how they would handle the tariff threat, and they've essentially said we would work with the government. Like, we're not going to oppose some sort of bailout package or measures to help people who've been affected. Like, we're not going to fight them on this. So why are we even having this election? And they're going to very quickly, I think, pivot to other things that are going on here and where they see weakness in how Mr. Ford has been governing.
So I was looking at Abacus polling came out with some numbers a couple of days ago, and they were looking at the top issues that Ontarians were focused on, or voters were focused on. And number one was reducing the cost of living, and number two was healthcare, and number three was affordable housing, and number four was tariffs. So that to me was, of the 26 issues or however many there were, to see this quickly rise to a top 5 issue, plays certainly into the narrative that Ford is presenting, that this matters to Ontarians. He's sort of positioned himself in this Captain Canada way, which we can have lots of conversation about.
I love it.
But do you think that, I imagine that a lot of the popularity that we've seen and the reduction in his negatives have a lot to do with this narrative, this idea that he is Captain Canada. So that was certainly a strategic move. Do you think that it has the legs to take him all the way through the campaign?
It might.
Yeah.
It's a quick campaign. It's only a month-long campaign. It's 28 days.
Yeah.
I think if it maybe was dragging on for 5-6 weeks, they would potentially have to present something else. Although, kind of the Captain Canada shtick, if I'll call it, and just coming out every day and blustering about Donald Trump isn't going to take you through 28 days of announcements.
Right.
I think you have to have they have to think a bit more creatively on their approach. So far in the campaign, Mr. Ford's been down in Windsor, obviously with the Canada-U.S. border symbolically behind him. That's how he launched his campaign. Today he was in London, talking about kind of helping workers and suggesting some new funding for affected workers if something happened with Trump. I think they'll have to come up with something a little more creative and a little bit more different, or else it might grow a bit stale to continually hammer home the same message every day. Although that might not stop them from trying.
Might not stop them.
But
they have the hat,
so
we have the hat too. Actually,
we have the T-shirt.
Yeah.
We have the T-shirt.
We have the T-shirt.
Everyone loves the hat. And again, he's taking these 2 trips to Washington, one on his own, and then alongside all of the other premiers in February, and then again for a governor's conference. So that's going to eat up a few days in the middle of the campaign. We'll have a couple of debates, but it is going to go by very quickly. Is every person in this province going to be paying attention like us, the days and days out of what they're announcing? Probably not, because again, it's a campaign that sort of comes out of nowhere too. So I do think they'll be under fresh pressure to face questions on different issues, obviously brought up by the opposition and all of these things outside of their control. But I think they're going to try to be very focused in their messaging on Donald Trump, the tariffs, and their campaign slogan, which is "Protect Ontario."
Yeah.
Is it true that this is the first winter election since 1981 in Ontario?
That's what my friend Robert Benzie tells me, and I don't doubt him.
Well, I
He
mean,
knows everything.
talking about just playing into all the factors here, I mean, that probably helps as well. It's hard enough during the summer to get people to door knock for you, but at -10, that probably doesn't help either. Right?
People are cold. They're coming off the holidays. There hasn't been a lot of build up to this. I think if you even compare this to what's happening on the federal scene, where I think there's a legitimate amount of people who want an election federally, right? I mean, it's crazy to think that there will have been 2 provincial elections in the time that we've had a federal one.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And there's now a leadership change, and there's just so much happening before people are even able to kind of voice their opinion at the polls. And then Ontario, it's almost like you have the reverse issue happening of people are getting an election that they don't even really want or aren't paying attention to. And I think Mr. Ford is doing that because it's at an opportune time for him. But yeah, it is, again, it's going to fly by, I think. But campaigns matter. Things happen. We've seen people with leads crumble by the end of campaigns. So they're important to watch and cover and scrutinize for people like us. But yeah, I mean, we'll see if during the 4 weeks there's any kind of major turnaround or events happening. I'll be going down to Washington hopefully for one of the trips, and that will be very interesting to see.
Very.
Mr. Ford's also been asked, hey, have you been able to solidify a meeting with President Trump? And he says not yet. But I mean, could that happen during a campaign? I mean, there's just so many things that could happen on that kind of Canada-US file throughout this. We'll see how it all ends up shaking out.
One of the questions that we had was, could the NDP and Liberals come together to defeat Ford? This is everyone's favorite question. It's like unity questions.
The tale as old as time.
Oh. The tale as old as time.
People talk about this all the time. And the way that our system is. So
tell our listeners.
No, I'm sorry.
The answer is just a hard.
It's not going to happen. They really do view themselves as having competing visions, competing priorities. They're 2 distinct parties. I mean, we've seen, again, at the federal level, there's been cooperation amongst parties in order to get things done in a minority situation. And I think the public also likes that, right? It's not just politicians bickering. It's at least they're doing something, right? It's a different situation here in Ontario with having a majority government. You can pass whatever you want to get everything through. But there's clearly, through the numbers, an appetite for a non-Ford party. It's not like he's not sitting at 80% in the polls. Right. We're talking 40%. Obviously, the way our first past the post system works, you don't need to have that high of a support. Your support has to be spread around geographically, which is really important. So there is an appetite. It's not just Ford, but whether those 2 parties can come together and cooperate, we have not seen that so far on the campaign trail. And in fact, as she launched her campaign, NDP leader Maura Stiles was extremely critical towards Bonnie Crombie, saying that she would be right at home in Doug Ford's cabinet. She wants to be Doug Ford. She's essentially conservative is her criticism. So she's trying to get those sort of non-Ford progressive voters on board. And then Crombie's messaging is, no, I'm a centrist. I'm actually moderate. I want those disaffected Ford people who want real leadership. And she's saying the NDP party doesn't actually have realistic ideas or sort of pie in the sky. So they are going to be jockeying too amongst themselves. So I think what we've seen so far in history shows us it's probably not going to happen that those 2 band together.
So I'm wondering if you can just give us some insight on who these people are, these leaders, because we know Doug Ford a bit better than we know the other 2. We didn't mention Maura Stiles also. This is her first time running. I think she's been in there for a couple of years now.
She's been elected for a while.
when was it? I feel like it was yesterday. Because we had Andrea Horvath, who
I'm gonna look it up because
she left.
She's been around for a while though.
Okay, as leader,
because not as leader. Sorry, she came in as leader after 2022.
2022, right? Okay, so we're at about 2-ish years with Merritt.
Yeah, 2-ish years.
But Andrea Horvath was a leader who was there for a long time, very well known. Mm-hmm. She became leader of the opposition. She left. She's now the mayor of Hamilton. And Merritt comes in. Bonnie, also new to this leadership role, as somebody that covers these people every day, who are they? Like in your analysis, like high level analysis, how would you describe these leaders?
And just before you do that, I'm just going to clarify so that we're only giving facts on this
show.
Facts. So she's been the leader of the Ontario New Democratic Party and the leader of the official opposition since February 4th, 2023. She's represented the Toronto riding of Davenport since 2018.
Okay, so she's been leader for about 2 years.
She's had some experience.
She's had some experience, yeah, for sure.
In the House. She's a former school trustee. Yes. So she's like well known in kind of the Toronto area, like city of Toronto. I think she also works in union, Marcel. So she has kind of that traditional sort of base. She's actually from Newfoundland, and she talks about it, kind of her upbringing there, and she came out to Ontario. But yeah, I mean, she's kind of that someone coming from that typical NDP background, kind of like union, school trustee, popular in the city of Toronto. And she took over the reins of the party, as you mentioned, from Andrea Horvath, who served a long time as opposition leader, and she was never able to. She kind of had that one crack after the Ontario Liberals fell apart in 2018, and it led to a Doug Ford majority. So she was never able to kind of rise above that. So Stiles has a significant amount of political experience. I'm not sure how well known she is provincially, and that's part of the work that she has to do. Bonnie Crombie, again, is more of a well-known entity in the Toronto area, but more the greater Toronto area, the suburbs, Mississauga, Peel region. These are all areas that parties need to win if they want to form government. She's had a lengthy career in politics. She has a business background as well, and she talks about that. She talks about kind of bringing the Liberal Party, which she felt, and many felt, had kind of gone too far to the left, kind of back to the center, being perhaps more of a business friendly environment. And she says she's fiscally responsible, but socially liberal. And so that's been Crombie's kind of messaging in this. She hasn't had a ton of time to get her bearings. It has been more than a year, but it's hard when you rebuild a party, fundraising, staff, getting candidates. Like this is all a big mountain to climb for really anyone, but especially a leader who's coming in with just over a year of experience. So I'd say they're both fairly well known in Toronto, but the challenge will be to get out into the different areas of the province and try to make their pitch to voters in the north, voters, in Ottawa. They've got to get better known, and that's part of what they'll be doing as they travel around during the campaign.
And are all three of those parties running full slates of candidates?
Yes, they plan to. So the PCs have nominated all of their candidates now. The Liberals say they're at about 100, but they will get there. I think they have a deadline of later coming up in mid-February to nominate. The NDP plans to as well. I don't think either the NDP or the Liberals have a full slate now, but they plan to. Some of them are in more competitive ridings than others. The challenge sometimes to get some of these candidates to run, but and I think the Green Party will too. To be honest, I haven't done as much.
We have to say something about the Green Party, or else everyone's going to get mad at us. We're going to have.
Sorry to not know this answer. Who's leading the Greens now? Is it still Schreiber?
It's Mike Schreiner. Yeah. His name's Mike Schreiner. He's actually a really effective opposition leader. He used to be a one-man show. Now he's got another. He's got a friend.
It's nice.
He doubled his
Everyone
caucus.
Needs a friend.
Hey, that's what they have federally too.
For the Greens, they try to be obviously their history is like an environmentally conscious party is what the Greens know for, but they're trying to broaden their base too, to be viewed as more of a kind of a moderate opposition. They obviously will be much more strategic in the kinds of riders they target. I don't think he'll be wasting his time in traveling all over the province. But, whether they can increase their vote share, even if they picked up one more seat, I think they'd be thrilled with something like that. So I think they'll be trying to pitch themselves as kind of a viable alternative too to people who want to look maybe a bit more outside of the mainstream parties.
Is there a debate planned?
There is. So I've heard that there's going to be at least one debate. And there's also, I expect there's going to be a debate in the north on northern issues.
Oh.
That one I heard was on Valentine's Day. I don't know if you leaders are looking for something to do. Tempting.
Dear.
Hang out with Doug.
I think it's during the day, but no, I think there's going to be at least a couple, and I think they have to do one, but I don't think we're going to see like 10 or 12 debates during this thing. I think it's going to be pretty much a one shot, and that will be, the time that the leaders actually are able to interact with each other on a stage for the public. And I hope that gets decent viewership so people can see them kind of in action proposing their ideas. I'll also know, I don't really know what kind of platforms we're expecting from the parties.
Or when.
Or I don't think the PCs will have one. I think they say like, what we stand, you saw our budget last year. This is our plan. I don't think it's going to be like a kind of policy heavy campaign. I think the NDP and Liberals will also sort of focus on their key areas. Like obviously the Liberals are going to talk a lot about healthcare. The NDP's already pitched some ideas about getting rid of tolls on a highway here, traffic and stuff like that. But
family doctor for every Ontarian in the next 4 years was I think the first Liberal promise out of the gate.
That's nice.
Yeah. So certainly there's going to be talk of major issues. There's promises, but it's not that kind of traditional campaign where they're posting like, massive platforms online for everyone to see. I don't expect that to happen.
I have a last question. And then you might have a last question, right? You usually do. Oh, you don't?
Well, wow, I could always pull out a question if we.
So mine is about slogans because I like that thing.
Yeah.
And I think I know what they are, but mind you, the jury's still out maybe on the NDP, but we have Protect Ontario coming out of the PCs. We have More for You, the Liberals. And is the NDP on your side?
It's on your side. Yeah.
Okay, so it was that. So I'm curious, what do you think about the slogans and how important are they in a campaign?
I think they are important. I think kind of in this day and age with social media and everyone busy and sort of the frantic nature of our lives, to have something that summarizes your pitch is probably the first thing that voters notice. I hope it's not all that they pay attention to, but I think it kind of like delivers that key message about what they believe this campaign is about. Obviously, the PCs protect Ontario from Donald Trump. Like that's going to be their main focus. The Liberals, More for You, they can offer more for you and their families on their healthcare theme. And I think there's a similar vibe to what the NDP slogan is, on your side. Like we're for you, we're to give you more, help your family, affordability. Like, so the two kind of opposition leaders are the ones who say like, we're focusing on you, where Doug Ford's focusing on himself. And the Ford pitch is more kind of about how he's the defender of the province and the province's interests. And that's what he's going to be pitching to voters throughout the campaign.
So interesting. So Laura, are you on the campaign trail? Like, will you be traveling with any leaders?
Well, I think I am going to Washington for one of them. There's no actual bus where we can hop on with them. It's not.
There isn't
it's not
even
like
a
a federal
bus?
campaign. No, none of them have it. But they
Okay.
do release their kind of schedule the day before, or they try to give us a bit of notice. Of some people we will be going kind of to different areas, but we're not going to be traveling around with them embedded as you see in some other, like in the federal campaigns, for instance. I don't think any of the parties are doing that this time around. So we'll be like in and out of sort of their announcements, going to DC on our own and meeting up with people there and the other premiers. So we'll be in and out and doing our kind of our own features too. I think, from if you're interested in kind of the media perspective, like how the Globe covers it, obviously we want to cover the news and present information to the public, but we also don't want to simply be on the kind of political agenda. We want to talk about our own issues, look into the housing promises, look into the state of healthcare of this province, do like kind of reality checks on those types of things and our own features and own ideas, as opposed to just being driven by what the political parties want to talk about. So we'll be doing kind of our own thing as well. So it'll be busy. There's always too much.
Yeah,
Too much to do.
I feel we were calling it like the Super Bowl of politics right now. It's like it's all in.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Laura. You're obviously a wealth of information. We're excited to see how you cover this campaign. And we really thank you for your time because we know it's so busy. So the fact that you carved out time for us, we appreciate. We hope you'll come back.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Up next, we'll sit down with the voices of a new podcast, Ontario Votes, to hear from the parties themselves. We'll be right back.
And now a word from our title sponsor, DoorDash. Just like we go beyond a ballot, DoorDash goes beyond delivery. DoorDash is committed to helping entrepreneurs thrive and strengthening connections within their communities. Entrepreneurs like Ganyet Oyesomi of Wagged Out Bistro in Morden, Manitoba.
So many times when I go through our reviews on DoorDash, I get to hear, oh, if not for DoorDash, I wouldn't have known that there are African foods that we can explore. So DoorDash has given you that platform to showcase your food and get more visible to different people who never thought you existed.
If you know me, you know I love sushi. And because of DoorDash, I've been able to try different sushi restaurants within my own community that I never would have checked out before. I love it. Stay tuned this season to hear the positive impacts that DoorDash has had on women across Canada. Joining us now are the voices of our new podcast, Ontario Votes. Larissa Waller, former Executive Director of Communications for Premier Doug Ford, Brianna Ames, former advisor to Premiers McGuinty and Wynne, and Melissa Bruno, former Chief of Staff to then Deputy Leader of the Ontario NDP, Jagmeet Singh. Welcome to all of you.
Great.
Thank you.
And baby. And baby.
Yeah.
That was so well played.
I know. What's her name again, Melissa? This is Melissa's baby.
This is Mila, and Mila is 7 months old.
So cute.
Well, we are so happy to have you here. You can listen to Ontario Votes every day, but we just had a great conversation with Laura Stone from the Globe and Mail, and she gave us kind of an overview of what we can expect in this Ontario election. Now we're going to go a little deeper into some party politics. Maybe we'll kick off just by sharing it's day 2. So we're fresh, we're early on. How are each of the parties coming out of the gate? What is the first message that each party is delivering to Ontario voters? Maybe Larissa, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so I think without apology, Doug Ford's message to Ontario voters is, who do you want to go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump? Do you want Marit Stiles? Do you want Bonnie Crombie? Or do you want Doug Ford? And I think he's right to ask that question. And I don't think I'll be proven wrong, but I think on election day, voters will answer the question by saying, we want you, Premier Ford, to go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump for the next 4 years.
Brianna, what is the Liberal message out of the gate?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're seeing is Bonnie really rejecting that premise and sort of saying, like, we're all aligned on Trump and tariffs, and it's a one Canada approach. And so let's get back to the basics here in Ontario. The services are broken, affordability issues, and really focusing on healthcare. So really trying to change the conversation to things that matter in everybody's day-to-day lives.
And Melissa, what is the NDP message?
Yeah, I think right out of the gate, the NDP team is really focused on fighting for people, fighting for working people, especially in the face of tariffs that we might see this weekend. And then talking about those foundational issues like focusing on building more homes, fixing schools, fixing healthcare to address the fact that life is harder for everybody.
One of our favorite things to do or see in an election campaign are the early ads and the slogans. We talked to Laura about the slogans, and I'd love your perspective on it. Protect Ontario, more for you, and on your side. I believe to be the 3 slogans. Brianna, why do you think the Liberals went with more for you?
I think what we're seeing, in the framing from Bonnie right now is that really sort of putting, Ford is sort of all about him. And that's how she's trying to frame the opposition. And so more for you is sort of going back to the basics and, what Ontarians can look for from a Liberal government.
Melissa, on your side, right? Is that, I'm like, is the jury still out, or is that the slogan?
No, that
Baby
is the
Milo,
slogan.
what do you think?
Yep, she confirms it is in fact still the slogan. And I think they went with that because fundamentally, like, they're focused on the people of Ontario and doing what's right for them. And they're begging the question that the Liberals and the Conservatives are going to continue to focus on the elite or their rich friend, which I think Mart actually addressed in the first ad that the NDP released yesterday, where she kind of made a little joke that life was harder for everyone except for all those rich friends of Doug Ford.
And if the NDP and Liberals are focused on a message which seems to be about Ontarians, like more for you, more for your families on your side, it feels like Doug Ford's message is really it's protect Ontario. It feels very Ontario based, maybe a little more about him and his agenda. Tell us about that one, Larissa.
I think this is maybe the most natural campaign slogan I've ever heard, because it builds off of what he's been talking about and how he's been behaving. So protect Ontario, I actually use those words on shows like this, on pods like this and shows like this, talking about what he's been doing. Right. And I think it helps with Doug Ford visually, the image, like, he's not a small man. He takes up space anywhere he is. And he looks like a guy that is ready to jump in a fight, right? Right now, that fight is with Donald Trump. And I think, like, genuinely, Doug Ford has been somebody who has always sort of given off the air of, I care about you. I might not be perfect. I might not always get it right, but I really care about you. And I think Protect Ontario sort of builds on that. And it's a very natural, authentic slogan for this exact moment in time.
Brianna, I'm curious, Bonnie Crombie has had a year in the role. Are Ontarians familiar with her? What does she need to do in this short window of a 4-week campaign to get to that path to victory?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think a lot of Ontarians are familiar with her, but I think the context around how she won leadership and why she won leadership sort of sets up why I think she's really up to the task. So, who is Bonnie? She was the mayor of Mississauga, one of the largest cities in Canada, and really one of the most politically complex municipalities and regions in the country. She was a councillor before that and a federal MP before that. And so while she's new to provincial politics, she's not new to politics. And she is a fresh face because she wasn't part of the McGuinty or Wynne, Ontario Liberal eras, but she brings the experience that we need. So it's fresh and new, but really savvy to take on a really formidable politician like Doug Ford. So I think she has the fortitude and the strength and the political intuition and chops to get there. So what does she need to do? She needs to cut through the noise. And it is super hard to do that as the leader of the third party at a time when it could not be louder with Liberal leadership, Trump, tariffs. It's brutal. I think being consistent, as she has been so far, on really one message and repeating it over and over and over again to get to people who, across the province aren't as familiar with her outside of sort of Mississauga. And then, all of that, we're all politicos here. So that needs to be complemented by a really strong ground game, a really strong air game, and fundraising. And so we're seeing all of that. I know we'll get to it, but lots of great candidates, lots of great volunteers on the ground. And they ended 2024 with over $5.4 million in fundraising, which is just massive and speaks again to what Bonnie's able to bring to the party because of her experience. So I feel really optimistic and excited for this campaign.
Melissa, I'm curious. Marit has been the leader since 2023. She is the leader of the opposition, but trailing third in the polls right now. What does she need to do to break through?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, like, campaigns matter. And so the polling is kind of what it is, and it's a snapshot in sort of like current times. And people could very well just be parking their vote with the Conservatives. So I think, the first day their campaign launch, I think the team is feeling really good because, they had a good launch. They had a good first day. They, released their first ad and the feedback's really great. I think, we're going to see them really talk up sort of Marit's personal background as a negotiator because she did negotiate with U.S. corporations in a past life. And so she's going to continue to go hard at Doug Ford and his assertion that, he's a good negotiator. I think they're going to start really outlining some of the examples like the beer store contracts and how the contract ballooned over $1 billion. And, they're going to tactically, from a ground game perspective, like they're going after all of those blue seats where there are clear orange blue fights. And if you just look at where she was last night, she was in York Southwestern, and this morning she was in Kitchener-Conestoga, and then she'll be in Essex tonight. And that gives you a pretty good indication of what to expect, I think, for the rest of the campaign.
And Larissa, I mean, obviously Doug Ford, he's leading 20 points in the polls. He has the polling advantage right now, but he will be the bearer of the attacks. What does he need to do, or what do you suspect he'll do over the next 4 weeks to maintain that advantage?
I think you'll see an expected level of message discipline.
Yeah.
He's always been an excellent, I was his comms director, so I always love it when candidates don't, veer too off script. And I mean, he's a guy who's known for veering way off script when he's giving a speech. but if we're talking about like sticking to the basics on the campaign trail, he is going to bring every what we call message events, so every event he does on the campaign, back to protecting Ontario. So back to how he's going to protect your job, how he's going to protect your family, how he's going to insulate Ontario from rough times ahead with Donald Trump. He's making a lot of links between the 4-year mandate he's seeking right now, and that is the exact 4-year mandate, more or less, that Donald Trump will have. He's talking about the fact that, beyond the tariffs, which we don't know when they're going to come in, they could come in the first, they could come in a week later, they could be gradual, they could be punitive. We have no clue. We know that this the CUSMA deal is supposed to be reviewed next year. We don't know when that might happen. We don't know what Donald Trump will, like what feather in Donald Trump's hat will, pop up a week from now, a year from now. What we do know that it's going to be very rocky. We know it's going to be choppy, and we know that we're going to have a guy kind of steering our ship, steady hands. And I think that that's what he's going to link every campaign message back to.
Amazing. I have one last very quick question. One to watch, a candidate to watch, a riding to watch. Tell our listeners, what is the one interesting new thing that they should be looking at in this election? Brianna, I'll start with you.
Okay, well, hot off the press today, Stephanie Smythe, former CP24 anchor, longtime anchor, is running in Toronto St. Paul's. So it is always exciting for any party to have somebody that high profile running for you. So much credibility, an audience, a lot of trust with the people who've known and followed her for so long. And she's running in like a historically liberal riding the last election in 2022. Oh, sorry. Did I say Toronto St. Paul's? I think I did.
Yes, you did. Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry, in Toronto St. Paul's in 2022. It was a really tight race between them and the NDP. So it is very winnable for her, for the Liberals and for her. And so I am super excited. And, just back to the first question, the ability for Bonnie and the Liberals to attract candidates of that high profile, I think speaks really well to the rest of the election. I'm really excited.
Awesome. Larissa?
Max Massimiliano is a guy running in Sudbury who I think deserves a lot of attention. He's in a fight, but I think it's a winnable fight. And I think he's going to be an incredible candidate. I want to do 2 quick shout outs. Cindy Pathakos, who's running for us in University Rosedale, and Justine Teplecki, who's running for us in Parkdale High Park. Both are former female staffers I've worked with and have known a long time. And I have so much respect for everybody who puts their name on a ballot, especially those 2. And if you're looking to where to donate to them because they're wonderful.
Love that. Okay. And Melissa, you got the last word.
I think the riding that I'm most interested in is York Southwestern. So where Mara was yesterday, we have Faisal Hassan, who lost by less than 800 votes to Michael Ford, who, very interestingly, is not running again. So I think that makes this particular riding even more interesting to watch. And Faisal, he was an MPP prior to losing his seat in 2023. He was part of our first ever Bloc caucus, and just like a really dynamic advocate that I'm really excited to see how this pans out.
Awesome. Larissa, Melissa, Brianna, thank you so much. We are so excited to listen to your voices. I know our listeners are so excited to listen to your voices throughout this campaign. We really appreciate your analysis and thoughts, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you for listening. New episodes air every Friday.
Subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram and find us at beyondaballot.com.